The night had turned into a battlefield of nature. Dark clouds gathered above the skyscrapers of New York, roaring like monsters ready to devour the city. Heavy rain fell with such force that the streets looked like rivers. Cars sped past in panic, their headlights slicing through the foggy air. In the middle of this chaos, Claire drove her black luxury car, her elegant figure outlined in the faint glow of the dashboard. She was rich, admired, and desired, but tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, she was just a lonely woman trapped in the fury of the storm. Her heart raced as the storm worsened. Thunder clapped so loud it felt like the sky was breaking apart. Lightning illuminated the road, and for a brief second, her beautiful face reflected in the glass, her eyes full of fear. She pressed harder on the accelerator, desperate to reach her mansion, but suddenly her car jolted. The engine coughed once, twice, then died. The luxury vehicle, worth more than most people made in years, sat lifeless in the middle of the deserted street. "No, not now," she whispered, her voice trembling as raindrops pounded on the windshield. She tried restarting the car. Once, twice, over and over again, but it refused to come back to life. Panic spread through her veins like poison. She grabbed her phone, but the storm had killed the signal. Trapped, alone, and helpless, Claire took a deep breath and stepped out into the wild storm. The cold rain instantly soaked her short. Black skirt and her silky hair stuck to her face. The city that once bowed at her presence suddenly felt like an endless monster swallowing her whole. She raised her arms, shouting, "Help! Someone, please!" But her voice drowned under the deafening thunder. Minutes felt like hours as she stood there, trembling in the rain. Her heels slipped on the wet asphalt and her body shivered uncontrollably. Her mind began to blur as the storm became heavier, stronger, and colder. With every strike of lightning, she grew weaker, her knees buckling under the weight of exhaustion. Her vision swirled, the street spinning like a nightmare. She stumbled, her arms flailing to hold on to something, but there was nothing. In a final whisper, she sighed, "Please," before collapsing onto the cold, wet road. Her fragile body lay motionless as the storm raged on, indifferent to her suffering. At that exact moment, across the same road, a man walked with quiet determination. David, dressed in old jeans, a worn-out shirt, and a simple hoodie, gripped a broken umbrella. He had finished his shift at the warehouse and was heading back to his small, rented apartment. He was drenched, tired, and burdened with the thought of how to feed his little daughter the next day. But no matter how cruel life was to him, he carried on. The storm didn't scare him. He had faced storms all his life, both outside and within. Yet tonight, destiny had something different planned. Through the curtain of rain, David's sharp eyes noticed a figure lying on the road. His heart froze. At first, he thought it might just be debris from the storm, but as he got closer, the shape of a woman appeared. His steps quickened, his pulse racing. When he reached her, the sight almost stopped his breath. A young woman beautiful beyond words, her delicate face pale and lifeless, her lips trembling with cold. Her expensive dress clung to her body, soaked from the downpour. For a moment, he just stared, lost in disbelief. Someone like her didn't belong in his world. But tonight, she did. David knelt beside her, his trembling hands brushing away the wet hair from her face. "Hey, can you hear me?" he shouted over the thunder. There was no answer, only the violent sound of rain. He touched her skin. It was icy cold. Fear shot through his veins, but he refused to let it paralyze him. He had seen enough pain in his life to know what silence could mean. Without hesitation, he slipped his arms beneath her fragile body and lifted her. She was lighter than he expected, yet holding her felt like carrying the weight of destiny itself. As he carried her, the broken umbrella swung uselessly at his side. He pressed her against his chest, trying to shield her from the rain with his hoodie. Each step was heavy, the storm trying to push him back, but he didn't stop. "Stay with me. Please, don't give up," he whispered, his voice trembling with urgency. Her head rested against his shoulder, her soft features brushing against his rough cheek. David didn't know who she was, didn't care about the wealth her clothes screamed of. At that moment, she was just a life that needed saving, and he would not fail. The road seemed endless, but finally, the faint light of his small apartment appeared through the curtain of rain. His heart pounded with relief. Pushing the door open with his shoulder, he rushed inside, laying her gently on his old couch. The room smelled of damp wood, The walls cracked and stained, but to him, it was the only safe haven he could offer. He quickly grabbed a towel, drying her hair, his fingers trembling as he whispered again, "You're safe now. You'll be okay." He lit a small heater, hoping to fight off the chill stealing her warmth away. His little daughter Emily, barely 7, rubbed her sleepy eyes and walked out from the bedroom. "Daddy?" she asked softly, her innocent voice breaking through the tension. David turned to her, his heart torn between fear and relief. "It's okay, sweetheart," he said gently. "She needed help. Daddy brought her here." Emily's wide eyes studied the beautiful stranger lying on their couch. She tiptoed closer, then placed her tiny hand on Claire's cold fingers. "Don't worry, lady. My daddy always saves people." David's chest tightened. He glanced at the unconscious woman, then at his daughter, and silently prayed, because tonight, under the fury of the storm, their lives had just changed forever. The storm had ended, but something new had begun inside Claire's heart. When she woke up in David's small apartment the next morning, sunlight spilled through the broken curtains, painting a soft glow over the modest room. She slowly sat up, confusion clouding her mind. Instead of her luxurious bedroom with velvet sheets and chandeliers, she found herself wrapped in a faded blanket, sitting on an old couch with a little heater buzzing beside her. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. But then her eyes fell on David asleep in a chair, his hoodie still damp from last night. Her gaze softened as she noticed his daughter Emily curled up on his lap, her tiny arms wrapped around his chest. Claire's lips parted in disbelief. She had seen wealth, power, and success all her life, but never such pure love. Slowly she rose, her feet touching the wooden floor, creaking under her steps. She walked to the small table, noticing a bowl of porridge and a cup of tea he had prepared for her. A billionaire who owned half the city now stood humbled before the kindness of a man who had nothing but still gave her everything he had. Later, David awoke to find Claire standing by the window, her hair glowing in the morning light, her eyes distant yet tender. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice breaking the silence. David cleared his throat awkwardly. "I just did what anyone would have done." But Claire shook her head. "No," she said firmly. "Not everyone would have carried a stranger through a storm. Not everyone would have given their home, their warmth, their safety to someone they didn't even know." Her words made David look away, hiding the emotions he didn't want to show. For him, kindness wasn't a choice, it was survival. In the days that followed, Claire returned again and again, sometimes with gifts for Emily, sometimes with food for David, though he always seemed reluctant to accept. She admired his pride, the way he carried his struggles without asking for help. She admired the way he smiled at his daughter, the way his eyes softened every time Emily laughed. For Claire, who grew up in a mansion filled with coldness and business meetings, David's small home felt warmer than anything she had ever known. Slowly, without either of them realizing it, love began weaving its way into their hearts. But love is never simple. One evening, as David walked Emily back from school, a black car pulled up beside them. 2 men in sharp suits stepped out, their expressions hard and cold. "You're David?" one of them asked. David nodded cautiously. The taller man leaned closer, his tone threatening. "Stay away from Claire, you don't belong in her world." "If you know what's good for you and your daughter, you'll end this now." Emily clutched her father's hand, sensing the danger. David's jaw tightened. He wanted to fight back, but he also knew he had too much to lose. That night, David sat alone, staring at the floor while Emily slept peacefully beside him. His heart ached with conflict. Claire was the first woman who had looked at him not with pity or judgment, but with genuine affection. Yet now, her world was closing in on him, ready to crush everything he had built for his daughter. He whispered to himself, "Maybe they're right. She deserves better. She deserves someone who can give her the life she's used to." His chest felt heavy, but he made up his mind. He would walk away before things became dangerous. Claire noticed his distance immediately. Her calls went unanswered, her visits unreturned. Panic filled her heart. She had never felt so helpless in her life. One evening, desperate, she drove through the city until she found him sitting on a park bench, watching Emily play on the swings. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she approached him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "David, why are you avoiding me?" she demanded, her voice trembling. He looked up, his eyes heavy with pain, but he didn't answer. "Tell me the truth," she cried. His silence cut deeper than any words. Finally, David spoke, his voice low and broken. "Claire, our worlds are too different. You belong in mansions and limousines. I belong here, in broken apartments, working double shifts to feed my kid. I can't give you the life you deserve." Claire's chest tightened. She stepped closer, her voice fierce with emotion. "I don't care about money. I don't care about mansions. I care about you, David. Do you understand? I care about the man who carried me through a storm. The man who gave me safety when I had nothing. That's worth more than all the money in the world." Her words struck him like lightning. For the first time, David saw the truth in her eyes. Claire wasn't the billionaire anymore. She was just a woman, vulnerable, desperate, and in love. His heart raced, torn between fear and desire. Then Emily's small voice broke the silence. She had overheard everything. "Daddy," she said softly, tugging on his sleeve, "please don't make her cry." "I like her." David turned, looking at his daughter, then back at Claire. Tears burned his eyes as he realized. This woman wasn't just changing his life. She was becoming a part of his family. In that moment, the storm that had once brought fear became a memory of fate. David reached out, taking Claire's trembling hand in his. "I don't know how this will work," he admitted, his voice shaking. "But if you're willing to fight for it, so am I." Claire smiled through her tears, her grip tightening on his hand. Emily giggled, running up to hug them both, her laughter ringing through the park like sunshine after rain. And so the billionaire and the poor single dad, two worlds apart, found love not in wealth, not in power, but in the storm that changed everything.